It is not clear exactly when the first violin was made. However, we do know it developed from early bowed string instruments brought to Europe from the Middle East. These would include such instruments as the rebec, in use from the 10th century. The earliest known violin, documented to have 4 strings, such as a modern violin, was made by Andrea Amati. The violin specifications from each luthier were different during that time, and it was not until around the 18th century that the current standard specifications were fixed. Many of the finest violins were made in Europe between 1700 and 1900 and are extremely valuable today. Stradivari is the most famous violin maker in history, with his violins commanding prices in the millions today. Other great makers of this period include the Amati family, Guarneri, and Jacob Stainer. Early string performances were the social activities of the European aristocracy. Many royal family gatherings would invite well-known performers to participate at functions. In the early years, very few people knew how to play the violin, and therefore the demand for them was minimal, allowing the time required to produce a magnificent instrument. The appreciation for the violin, alongside a rapidly expanding repertoire, improved quite dramatically during the 19th and 20th centuries, with more and more children learning the instrument. This has increased the demand for quality violins, which has resulted in the manufacturing of violins on a much larger scale now. What makes a good violin? A good violin should have the following points. Ease of tuning. The easier the tuning, the easier it is for students to learn and become more proficient. It also makes learning so much more enjoyable. Normal for performance. The violin must be constructed with exacting standards, or it will cause the musicians many problems. The assembly is critical to the final sound and playability of the violin. Any gap in production is a gap in sound. Harmonious tone. Musical instruments must have a harmonious tone, so both the player and the audience can feel the beauty of the music. Stable without distortion. Besides the above 3 points, the violin's wood must be stable without any distortion, so it will last a lifetime. The structure of the violin. Scroll, nut, pegs, fingerboard, bridge, top, F-hole, tailpiece, saddle, bass bar, purfling, linings, corner block, ribs, tail gut, end pin, back, sound post, mark. The material of a violin. Spruce, maple, ebony. Spruce. The top of the violin, also known as the soundboard, is made from spruce. Great importance is placed on the ring density, which has great effect on the quality of voice. Most of the spruce is from north of Italy, Russia, Alaska, and northeast of China, because the frigid zone has very low temperatures, causing the trees to grow very slowly. The ring, representing each year's growth, is tight and even, which ultimately is perfect for stringed instruments, greatly improving tone. Franz Sandner purchases a large quantity of this spruce, and after careful selection, only about 30% of this wood can be used to produce a violin. Maple. This is the material used for the back, ribs, scroll, and the bridge. Maple is a much harder wood than spruce and requires at least 1 year's drying time. If a higher-end violin is wanted, the drying time can go well beyond 3 years. The maple is mainly from East Europe, Yunnan, and Sichuan provinces of China and Canada. The woods produced in different places are not the same, but the actual difference is minimal. Ebony. The main material used fingerboards and pegs, due to its hardness and resistance to wear. This hardness is essential to ensure that fingerboard and pegs will not deform or warp. The drying time is much longer, with a minimum of 3 years. The ebony used mainly comes from Africa and Burma. The production of violin. Machine drying and natural drying. The fresh wood moisture content is about 25 to 35%. Each piece of wood that Franz Sandner uses in each stringed instrument takes about 2 to 3 weeks of drying time to decrease the moisture, down from 3 to 5%. Then the wood is naturally dried for 2 to 3 years in the warehouse, and we start production when the wood is down to a 5 to 7% moisture content. This avoids the risk of distortion and crack problems. Wood integration. Putting the two pieces of toned wood together with glue. The usage of glue and the gluing time is very important, as any mistake in the manufacturing process can cause the wood to crack. Assembling the front and back together. This process has a grand influence on the timbre of the string instrument. The wood must be a perfect fit, as poor fitting will affect the tone of the violin and its ability to freely vibrate. Purfling. While improving the beauty of the violin, more importantly, the purfling runs around the edge of the spruce, providing some protection against cracks originating at the edge. It also allows the top to flex more independently of the rib structure. Scroll. Perfect scroll carving, not only the symbol of art, it also is important for the balance of the violin, which ultimately improves playability. Varnish. The thickness and texture of varnishing is one of the key factors which have influence on the sound of stringed instruments. The formula of varnish is the preserved secret of every stringed instrument manufacturer, and it is also Franz Sandner's 100 years of experience. Assembly. This is one of the most important processes because it has most great influence over the stringed instrument's sound and performance. Peg. Every peg must be perfectly fitted to the peg box for both ease of tuning and for maintaining pitch when being played. Bridge. The bridge must be perfectly fitted to the top of the violin, which forms the lower anchor point of the vibrating length of the strings and transmits the vibration of the strings into the sound box of the violin. Any gap between the bridge and the soundboard will cause a loss in sound quality. Additionally, the bridge must be properly arched with correct height of each string and spacing of each string, allowing the player to use all 4 strings easily and individually. Equally important is the thickness of the bridge, allowing the free flow of vibrations into the sound box of the violin without any absorption into the bridge. The bridge ultimately has a major effect on the tone and sound the violin will produce. Sound post. It is made of spruce. The main function of the sound post is to transfer the vibrations from the top to the back. The position of sound post and the degree of tightness with top and back also have enormous impact on the tone of the stringed instrument. With skilled professional assembling technicians is the key factor which makes the Franz Sandner string instrument famous all over the world market. All Franz Sandner instruments are made with the goal of offering musicians instruments that are visually and tonally attractive. Selection of materials and the application of the principles of violin making are in accordance with the strict requirements of the founder, Mr. Franz Sandner, who dedicated his whole life to the art of violin making. No matter what the player's level of experience, there is a Franz Sandner string instrument for everyone. The Student Violin SV series caters for the beginner, whilst the Concert Violin Handmade CV series and the Master Violin MV series are played by many world-famous violin players. Visit any of Franz Sandner's distributors throughout the world and experience a Franz Sandner instrument for yourself. We know you won't be disappointed.